We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? I'll give the call to the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Yeah. Prime Minister, there are reports that at least 34 passports have recently been issued under this government to facilitate the return of individuals who left Australia to join ISIS. Can the PM confirm that none of his ministers, nor any member of staff, made representations to any relevant departments or agencies to support or expedite the issuing of Australian passports to ISIS sympathisers in Syria?
Yeah. Call to the Honourable the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. They're Australian citizens. They now have an entitlement, a right to come back to our country. There's no silver bullet. Not my words, the words of that soft person, Peter Dutton. He used to sit on that side of the chamber. We'll work with those people, given they're Australian citizens and they have the right to come back. If people are Australian citizens, they have a right to return, and I need to deal with the realities of the way in which our laws and our constitution work. There's good reason as to why we don't want media attention to some individual cases.
Order.
I don't want cameras parked out the front of schools or people being scrutinised as they're going into a mosque. Again, guess who? Peter Dutton. Peter Dutton.
Order. Order. Members on my right. Members on my right will cease interjecting immediately. Order. No, the manager is entitled to raise his point of order, and he will do so in silence.
Thanks, Speaker. And it goes to section 104 on relevance. It might be the
Order. Order.
It might be the Prime Minister's birthday today, but that doesn't mean he should get leeway not to answer a direct question about whether any of his ministers made directions to have these passports issued.
The Prime Minister was the manager. Order. The manager is correct. The Prime Minister was asked a question about his government and any ministers involved with these decisions. He has had a minute explaining the background to the question, and I'll ask him now to return to the question.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. What I'm doing is explaining the law as provided by those opposite, the laws in which this government is operating, in which those opposite put in place when they were in government. And we were asked about— I'm talking about the law.
The Leader of the Nationals. Order. The Leader of the Nationals will cease interjecting.
We don't have to just include Peter Dutton, because people come and go from the front bench over there. People come and go. But one of them who's back is the member for Berowra. And this is what he had to say. Although many of these people are of counter-terrorism interest, under Article 12.4 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it is their right as Australian citizens to return to Australia.
The manager on a further point of order.
Speaker, you asked that the Prime Minister bring himself directly relevant to the question. The question was directly relevant as to ministerial involvement, and he is not coming back to that part of the question.
The Prime Minister needs to be directly relevant to the question. If he has some quotes, and I'm not sure if he's still reading from the same quote, but if he's reading and he's entitled to answer the question as long as he's being directly relevant. He can't talk about any other topics, but I'm just going to listen carefully. He's had some time now, and he was asked a specific question regarding his government's involvement, but he's answering the question. I can't give a yes/no answer, as much as you would like that, but that's not allowed under the standing orders. I don't have that direction. So the Prime Minister will continue.
What I'm doing is explaining what they know to be the case, which is that we're operating under the law. Under the law.
Order.
Under the law. Indeed, the member for Berowra went on to say the proposed temporary exclusion order scheme doesn't arbitrarily deprive these people of the right to abode. Instead, it necessarily gives the government an effective means to monitor and regulate the return of these fighters. Mr Speaker, We are not repatriating these people.
Order.
We have made it clear.
Member for Fisher.
A non-government organisation took us to court demanding that we do that. We opposed that court action. We won the court decision, and those opposite know that this is the case. The hypocrisy on this is extraordinary, given that 40 people came home on their watch, including not partners or relatives, including ISIS fighters.
The member for Moncrieff will cease interjecting. When the House comes to order, there was far too much noise during that answer. We'll hear from the honourable member for Menzies.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. What is the Albanese government's response to recent events in Iran and the Middle East, including how the government is supporting Australians in the region?
Call to the Honourable the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. I'm surprised, frankly, that this was not the topic of the first question from those opposite, but it says it all. It says it all, Mr Speaker.
Order. The member for Page is now warned.
I hope you're not suggesting that that applies over here.
Order. Order. The member for Page has made his intervention. I'm going to ask him to assist the House by not intervening anymore.
Well, Australia stands with the brave people of Iran in their struggle against what is an oppressive regime. The Iranian regime has directed attacks on Australian soil that has brought death, destruction and chaos in its neighbours for decades. While Australia is not directly involved in current military strikes, we've been clear of our utter rejection of the brutal Iranian regime. We are concerned about regional escalation and the protection of civilians, and we note the public statement just put out by the Gulf states and the United States of America. Australian officials are closely monitoring the evolving situation. We support the US acting to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and to prevent Iran from continuing to threaten international peace and security. And we support the Iranian people being allowed to determine their own future. Our first priority is the safety of Australians in the region. We understand how distressing and challenging this time is, and we will do all that we can to provide you with information and to support you. We continue to advise Australians to not travel to Iran and to leave as soon as possible if it is safe to do so. Our ability to provide consular assistance in Iran is extremely limited due to the correct decision that we made to expel the Iranian ambassador and close our embassy in Tehran after the evidence of the IRGC's involvement in terrorist attacks on Australian soil. Given our concerns around security in the region, we've also upgraded Australia's travel advice to do not travel for Israel, Lebanon, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar and the UAE. Australians should leave now if it is safe to do so. The Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade has activated its Crisis Centre to provide consular support to Australians in the region. The registration portal is now open for Australians seeking assistance in Israel, Iran, the UAE and Qatar. Travellers should prioritise their safety, monitor events and follow local advice. Australians requiring consular assistance can contact the Consular Emergency Centre 24/7 on 1300 555 135. That's 1300 555 135 in Australia, or if they're overseas, outside Australia, +61 2 6261 3305. That is +61 2 6261 3305.
Indulgence, the Leader of the Opposition to associate.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I associate myself with the sentiment of the Prime Minister here and what he's just said a moment ago? This is a genocidal, authoritarian and despotic regime that has existed in Iran since 1979. They have been responsible for unspeakable acts. They have supported terrorist organisations throughout the world, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the IRGC has acted to support terrorist acts throughout the world, including in this country. 2 acts we have seen, at least, in this country. And of course, the listing of the IRGC was something that both sides of the parliament supported. It should have happened earlier, but both sides of the parliament have supported that. We welcome the actions.
To conclude his remarks.
We welcome the actions of the US and Israel. We welcome the demise of the Ayatollah, and we hope for the demise of this regime and a replacement of this regime with democracy, with freedom for the people of Iran.
Call to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition in the House.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Home Affairs. I refer to notes taken by the Secretary of the Department of Home Affairs during a meeting she and the Minister had with Save the Children about repatriating ISIS sympathisers before the last election that were provided to the Senate. These notes have a reference that TB stated a commitment to find a way. What exactly was the commitment the Minister made to Save the Children at this meeting?
Call to the Leader of the House and Minister for Home Affairs. Order.
Well, the evidence clearly is the fact that there was no repatriation, that there was no assistance. That's what this government has done. This government has made sure that we have not in any way, provided any form of support for these individuals. That is why the meetings were followed with a letter from Save the Children complaining that the government had refused to offer any support.
Order. Members on my left. We'll hear from the honourable member for Werriwa.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is the Minister representing the Foreign Minister. What advice is the Albanese government providing Australians in the Middle East who might be impacted by travel disruptions?
Call to the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Defence and the Minister representing the Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Well, can I thank the member for her question? Let me start by saying that Australia stands with the people of Iran in their brave struggle against an oppressive autocracy which in the last few weeks has seen them kill thousands of their own citizens. And as the Prime Minister has said, we support the United States-led action which has as a core aim denying Iran the ability of ever having a deployable nuclear weapon, which would be a catastrophe for the world. Now, Australia has a number of equities in the Middle East. There are more than 100 Australian serving personnel in a number of countries across the region, but most of whom are in the United Arab Emirates, where we have had for many years operational headquarters at El Minhad outside of Dubai. I can report to the House that all of those serving men and women are accounted for and right now are safe. We have about 115,000 Australians across the Middle East, which represents a significant consular challenge. Again, as the Prime Minister has said, right now we have a do-not-travel advisory in place for Iran, Israel and Lebanon, but also the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain and Kuwait. We have had a do-not-travel advisory in place for Iran since 2020, but not only there, for other parts of the Middle East, for example, in southern Lebanon, where there has been a do-not-travel advisory in place since 2019. As the Prime Minister has said, our ability to provide effective consular assistance to those in Australians in Iran since August of last year has been very limited, but we are encouraging Australians there and in Israel as best as possible to register on the crisis portal, and that has been extended to Australians in the UAE and Qatar. And what that means is that those people who register will be given direct communication about our advisories and the latest information and any actions that Australia is planning. Beyond that, we encourage people to follow the advisories that we publish on Smart Traveller. For those in the region who have particular concerns, and indeed for those Australians who have particular concerns for family in the region, our 24-hour consular hotline is available, and that number for those people outside of Australia is +612 6261 3305. In respect of air travel, the most obvious point to make is that airspace across the Middle East is currently blacked out, and so there is no air travel at all. Without speculating too much, what I would observe is that as air travel starts to reopen, we expect that the most expeditious flights, which will come online quickest, will be commercial options. Now, this is a fast-moving situation. As information comes to hand, we are publishing it as quickly as possible in our travel advisory as it is forming the assessments around the actions that we take, because our primary concern right now is for the safety and welfare of Australians in the Middle East.
Before I call the honourable member for Clare, I'm pleased to inform the House that present in the gallery today are 290 students and staff from Christian Schools Australia and other Christian schools associations who have been attending the Compass Student Leaders Conference in Canberra over the last several days. And also present in the gallery today is a group of hardworking and leading Australian GPs representing the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. A warm welcome to you all. Give the call to the member for Clare.
To the Prime Minister. The Lithgow Locomotive Workshop is a critical piece of railway infrastructure. The site is needed to expand and secure existing freight rail businesses and new ventures such as battery electric train manufacturing. Yet it seems that Pacific National wants to sell it to a property developer. The community wants the site saved, and I note that the recent New South Wales Country Labor Conference unanimously called on the state and federal governments to begin discussions to buy the site and support local workers and businesses. Will your government do this?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the member for Clare for his question. Indeed, I was in Orange in the members' electorate just a couple of weeks ago at the country conference, and I can assure the member that the many members who were there enjoyed their time in what is a thriving regional city of Orange that is seeing a diversification of its economy, and we were very welcome there, and I thank the community through the member for hosting us. I do note that this is a Pacific National asset, and Sydney trains operate the line there. The government is supporting a future made in Australia through our National Reconstruction Fund that is supporting the revitalisation of our local manufacturing sector. We're continuing to progress work through a variety of mechanisms, including the National Rail Action Plan. What that was aimed at doing, and was the subject of one of the commitments that we made in a budget reply, is to avoid the situation whereby different states were all trying to manufacture all at once, but to get coordination, to get productivity and therefore to get costs down for Australian manufacturing. That was an agreement that we've taken through state and territory transport ministers as well. That includes, of course, not just passenger rail but also the rail freight industry. And one of the things that has been very successful about Australian rail manufacturing is that, unlike some of the carriages that have been commissioned overseas in parts of Asia, the trains actually fit the tracks. When the trains need renovation, you don't have to shut down the track, such as the Sydney Light Rail track was shut down for more than 6 months. Just like when we manufacture ships here, you don't have a situation where the ferries down the Parramatta River can't go under the bridges because people would be decapitated if they were on them. It makes sense for us to make things here. We'll continue, and the minister will continue to engage with the member, and I'll also raise this issue with the Minister for Industry, Senator Ayres, in the other place, on his behalf.
The call to the member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering real cost of living relief for Australians and making a difference in their lives? How does this compare to other approaches to the cost of living?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Dunkley for her question, and I congratulate her on the anniversary of her election in the Dunkley by-election to this place. My second favourite, Jodie. I thank you for the question. Last fortnight, I've seen the positive difference that our government is making, easing cost of living pressures, improving the lives of Australians, investing in our nation's future. In Melbourne, I met nurses at the Royal Children's Hospital who'd been supported by Paid Pratt while they did their training placement. In Croydon, with the member for Deakin and Menzies, I met tradies benefiting from free TAFE, and with the $10,000 cash incentives to study their trade and build more homes. At the Heidelberg Repat Hospital in Jagga Jagga, I congratulated Rob Winther for his 60 years of service to our veterans, and I spoke to veterans about the difference that it's made us properly resourcing the department and not holding up the payments to which they deserve. I visited a newly fully bulk billing GP practice in Launceston, one of the 3,400 across the country, 3,400 with our investments meaning more people are getting bulk billed. At an endo clinic in Werribee with the member for Lalor, I spoke to women benefiting from our record investment in women's health. In Adelaide, with Premier Malinowskis, I announced some 17,000 new homes, including 7,000 reserved for first home buyers, and visited the AUKUS facility and the member for Port Adelaide's electorate, and looked at there the extraordinary investment that is taking place, which will mean that we're building nuclear-powered submarines there in Adelaide at those facilities. In Orange, of course, we talked about the infrastructure and services we're delivering for people in the regions. And as of yesterday, over 250,000 cheaper home batteries have been installed across the nation, cutting power bills with cheaper, cleaner energy. Mr. Speaker, I take the interjection. We encourage that member to meet more people. I assure you. We encourage you to get out and about. We do that. We do that. Every one of these measures that we're undertaking, practical measures delivering real change for Australians, strengthening Medicare, easing the cost of living, investing in skills, while those opposite just have been busy fighting each other.
Just reminding the member Barker I can definitely hear him from here. So order. Just making sure. Thanks, member for Herbert. So we'll just order the member for Barker. Had a good go. I'm sure you want to stay. We'll just calm, and then we can hear from the Leader of the Nationals.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Home Affairs. Can the minister inform the House when he or his office last had contact with Dr Jamal Rifi concerning the repatriation of ISIS sympathisers?
Call to the Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. It would be many, many months since I've had a conversation with Dr Jamal Rifi on that particular issue. Very many months since I've had a conversation on that. The last time...
Order. Members on my left, the member for Casey is going to leave the chamber under 94A. This continual... Order. Members on my right are not helping the situation, but this continual conversation non-stop during answers is not going to continue. Order. Order. The Minister in continuation.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. What followed the last time that I think Dr Jamal Rifi was present at a meeting I had on this issue, what followed was a letter from Save the Children, who were also at that meeting, which included this sentence: "We are deeply disappointed with this decision to refuse assistance to Australians in trouble overseas."
The minister has the minister concluded his answer? Yeah. Yeah. Resume your seat. Order. Order. Well, we'll just be clear. The minister was asked a question about an individual. He was giving information to the House about the individual in the meeting he had, so there's no way he couldn't be any more direct relevant than he was. Okay. We'll hear from the honourable member for Blair.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government cutting taxes for workers and making the budget more sustainable? How does this compare with other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Speaker. There is no finer local member in this parliament than the member for Blair. I thank him for his question, and I also, on behalf of his friends on this side of the House, I send my best wishes to Carolyn as well as she recovers from some of her health challenges in recent times. Now, this government is hard at work putting our fifth budget together, Mr Speaker, and there will be a major focus on inflation in the near term, productivity over the medium term, and also making our economy more resilient at a time of extreme global uncertainty. Now, developments in the Middle East are an important reminder of volatility in the global economy right now, and we are closely monitoring implications for oil prices in particular. Annual inflation was steady in January, much lower than we inherited, but already higher than we'd like because of a combination of temporary and more persistent pressures. That's why we are helping with the cost of living in ways that those opposite don't support. It's also why we are improving the budget in ways that they were incapable of, Mr Speaker. We found $114 billion in savings. We've delivered 2 surpluses. We got their debt down by $176 billion. We improved the budget position in the MYEFO in December, Mr Speaker, but we do know that there is more work to do. But we are strengthening the budget at the same time as we are cutting income taxes for all 14 million taxpayers. And because of our combined tax cuts, Mr Speaker, an average taxpayer will keep an extra $50 a week to help with the cost of living. Now, if the new opposition leader had his way, Australians would not be getting a tax cut this year or next year, and deficits would be bigger in both years as well. He was the Shadow Treasurer responsible for their policy of higher taxes for every taxpayer, bigger deficits and more debt, Mr Speaker. Not content with being the worst minister in the Morrison government, he was also the worst Shadow Treasurer in memory, so they made him the leader of the Liberal Party, Mr Speaker. They made him the leader of the Liberal Party, Mr Speaker, and this is why they can't release their election review. Because, and I've seen it, Mr Speaker, and I read on page 21, I refer you to page 21 of the unreleased election review, Mr Speaker, which says
Order. Members on my right. The Minister for Defence Industry. Order. Order. When the House. The order. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition in the House is rising on a point of order.
It's a relevance. Standing Order 104. The member for Blair asked about tax cuts and budget repair. He also mentioned other approaches. He didn't ask for an impression of Paul Keating, where he just goes on the attack.
Order. 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 The Deputy Leader of the Opposition in the House, I will remind, needs to state the point of order, and the Treasurer was asked. Order. That was an abuse of the point of order process, but we're just going to deal with this. He was asked. He wasn't asked alternative approach. He was how does it compare with other approaches. So there was difference. It is the Treasurer's birthday with the Prime Minister, so I'm feeling generous today. But the rules still apply to everyone. So I'll just remind the Treasurer to be directly relevant to the question he was asked.
It's very kind of you, Mr Speaker, but not as kind as the Shadow Minister. What a gift on my birthday, Mr Speaker. Thank you very much. But the point I'm making is we're for lower taxes and for smaller deficits. They're for higher income taxes and bigger deficits, and that's why their election review says that that's what cost them their economic credentials, Mr Speaker. It says that on page 21. I refer everyone to it. Mr Speaker, the member for Hume is the economic and political genius who is responsible for the mess that they're in right now, Mr Speaker. And by electing him their leader, they've shown they haven't learned a thing and they haven't changed a bit.
I think the member for Page was on a point of order regarding correct titles. So, yes, I didn't want to interrupt the flow. Just remind all members, including the Treasurer, to refer to the leader, everyone by their correct titles. Order. Member for Cunningham. Give the call to the Leader of the Nationals.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Home Affairs. Was the minister or his office aware of intelligence advice that at least one of the ISIS sympathisers posed a security threat to Australians when he met with Dr Jamal Rifi and Save the Children in June 2025?
Give the call to the Leader of the House.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Well, for the first thing, nobody ever should talk about intelligence advice that you receive from the agencies in the privacy of the House of Representatives. And if you wanted an example of a group of people who are not ready for national security, it's when they start asking in question time about advice from intelligence agencies, when they start talking about that.
Order. Hang on. Leader of the Nationals, you've asked your question. This kind of yelling and non-stop is not going to continue. I'm prepared to remove you if you don't show the Minister respect or the House respect as well. The Leader of the House.
Thanks. So with respect to that advice that he refers to one member of that cohort. Let me say this with respect to the one member I presume he is referring to. There is one member of this cohort where ASIO have advised that they meet the threshold for a temporary exclusion order to be put in place. ASIO are the correct experts to be able to make that assessment, and this government will not take risks with national security. So when ASIO make that assessment and it is presented to me, the decision immediately is to make a temporary exclusion order, which is exactly what we have done. I would remind the Leader of the National Party of the words of a former Leader of the National Party who said this: all the shock jocks and so many people who call themselves patriots will say they shouldn't be allowed back into Australia, but they're Australian citizens, so you can't leave them stateless. They are entitled to come back here. Not my words, the words of the member for Riverina. We have a situation where there are people who have been part of an appalling decision to act in support of one of the worst organisations the world has known.
The Leader of the House will just pause for a moment. The Manager of Opposition Business on a point of order.
Thanks, Speaker, and it goes to direct relevance. The question was very specific. Were you aware of that security threat when you met with Dr Jamal Rifi in June 2025?
Yes, the Minister was asked a narrow question, but he is providing information regarding the actual individual he was asked about. So if you're asking a question and he's giving information to the House about the ISIS sympathiser that he was asked about specifically, so just making sure his answer remains relevant to that point of the question, is giving some context around a quote from another member to the House.
Speaker. So in terms of this cohort, the government would prefer for none of them to return. But if any of them meet the legal threshold for a temporary exclusion order and our intelligence agencies give that advice, then the order will be put in place, as has happened.
Call to the honourable member for Ford.
My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government lifting bulk billing rates across Australia? Why is universal access to free GP visits so important after a decade of cuts and neglect?
We call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member for Ford. I think he and I first worked on a campaign together back in 1993 in the electorate of Macon for our common friend Peter Duncan, in yet another election when the Liberal Party was promising to abolish Medicare. And he learned, and I learned then, just how critically important it is for Labor to maintain the rage always to deliver the fundamental principles of that universal health program. And that's why he fought so hard, Mr Speaker, for our strengthening Medicare agenda at the last election, to drive up bulk billing rates in his electorate of Ford. We knew that they were in freefall when we came to government in 2022, and the Treasurer's decision to triple the bulk billing incentive in 2023 has meant that already the bulk billing rate for pensioners and concession card holders has come right back over 90%. It's over 91% in the member's state of Queensland. But we did know that bulk billing was continuing to slide for those Australians in Middle Australia who did not have the benefit of a concession card, continuing to slide because of the multi-year freeze to the Medicare rebate put in place by the former Liberal government. So our investments on the 1st of November, the record investment in bulk billing, have been just so important for Middle Australia. I'm happy to report to the member for Ford that the number of practices that bulk bill every single patient every single time they come into their practice has doubled in his electorate. One of 3,500 general practices now in Australia who are 100% bulk billing. And we know on this side of the House just how important that is. But those on the other side never quite learn. Now, this is the third Liberal leader to sit opposite this Prime Minister, Mr Speaker, and each of them has tried desperately to differentiate themselves from the failures of their predecessor. But there is one thing that has united every single Liberal leader who has sat in that chair, and it's basic opposition to the principles of Medicare, Mr Speaker. And this latest leader is no different. He was a barracker for every single one of the cuts and pieces of neglect that the member for Ford talked about. When Peter Dutton tried to abolish bulk billing altogether and make every single person pay to go to see the doctor, there was no stronger supporter than the member for Hume, Mr Speaker. He said they'd be doing Australians a favour because then they pay much more attention to every single GP visit that they went to.
Look, the member for Page on point of order. I know it's about titles, but the Leader of the Opposition is the member for Hume, and it has been a regular occurrence in the previous leaders as well. So what's your point of order?
Well, it is member not acknowledging the Leader of the Opposition is that title, Speaker. We can start referring to ministers for the members, what member they are, what seat they are, but we pay them the respect of the minister. The Leader of the Opposition has an official title, respecting the standing orders, and I ask the minister to refer to it.
Order. Look, just ask everyone for a little bit of leeway with new order. Prime Minister, you're not helping. Just with everyone, there are some new titles in place, so there are new positions in place, so I just want to be a bit lenient with everyone for the first week or so. If it continues, member for Page, trust me, I'm aware of it, I'm monitoring it. You do not want to get up anymore, but people are referring to those. We'll just allow everyone to settle in. Okay? The Minister for Health will assist the House by referring to everyone by their correct titles.
Thank you, Speaker. The now Leader of the Opposition said we know that by putting a price on going to the doctor, GPs and their patients will look to use the doctor's time as effectively as they possibly can. It was all a favour to individual patients. Mr Speaker, how out of touch could you possibly be with the reality of the household budgets of Middle Australia?
Give the call to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition in the House.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Given the war in the Middle East and the suspension of air travel following the airstrikes on Iran, has the government halted its plan to bring home ISIS sympathisers? And will the government now prioritise bringing home law-abiding Australian citizens at risk from the conflict?
Prime Minister has the call.
The premise of the question is wrong.
Give the call to the honourable order. Give the call to the member for Holt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering for working women, and what could place this at risk?
The call to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Holt for the question, but also her amazing advocacy for working women right across Australia. Now, the Labor government has put gender equality at the heart of the Fair Work Act, which is delivering real results for Australian women. We, as a government, have taken action to reinvigorate enterprise bargaining. Recent ABS weekly earnings data show that women on enterprise agreements earn 12.4% more. And the Albanese Labor government has consistently advocated for a pay increase and protect the penalty rates for minimum wage and award-reliant workers, many of who are women. Of course, under the Albanese Labor government, the gender pay gap is now at its lowest on record, at 11.5%. When the former coalition left government, the gender pay gap was 14.1%. Now, the progress that we have seen hasn't happened by accident. It's a result of a government that prioritises gender equality. Now, I'm asked, Mr. Speaker, what could put this at risk? Well, the biggest thing to put this at risk is those opposite. Because the new Leader of the Opposition is no different to his predecessors when it comes to his opposition to better wages and conditions for working women. For example, following the good news of a minimum award wage increase, which many working women rely on, the member for Hume could not hide his disappointment when he said, "No doubt there'll be tough days ahead." I'm not sure what he was referring to, but it certainly wasn't the low-paid workers that rely on these wage increases. And when the Labor government took action to deliver pay increases to low-paid feminised workers and increase flexibility of working arrangements, the response from the member for Hume in an interview on Sky News, well, these changes just weren't necessary. Well, the member for Hume needs to tell that. Okay, the new Leader of the Opposition needs to tell that to the working women of Australia who are benefiting from more than $255 a week on average under this government. Now, in an interview on Canberra Radio, he was very critical about our laws. His big criticism, they were going to push wages up. Well, I have to say the Leader of the Opposition may have missed the memo, because that's exactly what our laws were designed to do. Of course, he may have got a bit confused, as he was a member of the former Liberal government that had an economic plan to keep wages deliberately low. We know that this government will get on and increase wages for working women, while those opposite are just the same old Liberals.
Call to the honourable member for.
I ask the Minister to table the document.
Resume your seat. Look, there's order. Before the member for Clark, I'm going to deal with this notion that people get up and say that people should table documents. Everybody reads things in this House. Every question that is read out is read out. I read things out all the time. It's childless, it's childish, and it's not necessary to do that when ministers are addressing the House or anyone else. It applies both sides. So I'm just asking members to cease doing that. It's nonsense. Give the call to the member for Clark.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. Minister, last year I wrote to you about the ecological and human risks of any emergency approval for fluorphenicol for salmon. I received no response and the approval proceeded. Since then, the antibiotic's been detected in wild marine life up to 10 kilometres from the fish pens. So what penalties will be imposed for this dangerous contamination? Or will the government let the salmon companies off the hook again, angling for votes in Tasmania?
The call to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Clark for that question. As the member for Clark would be aware, the APVMA is an independent body and is responsible for the decisions around the emergency listing and use of florfenicol in Tasmanian waters. He would also know that it's the Tasmanian government's responsibility to manage its waterways, and the Tasmanian government are responsible for the management of its waterways. The APVMA has made a call that they may remove the emergency listing, and it is basing that decision on new available evidence and science as it made its original decision, and I remind him that it's an independent statutory authority.
Give the call to the member for Deakin.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government helping with the cost of living and boosting retirement incomes? What are the alternative approaches to cost of living relief and superannuation?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thanks to the member for Deakin for all of the great work that he's doing as the newish member for Deakin, and also for his question, Mr Speaker. We saw in the data last week that headline inflation was steady in January, much lower than it was under the Liberal Party, but still higher than we would like. And that's why it's so important that we're getting the budget into better condition, and also at the same time rolling out cost of living relief for people who are doing it tough. We've got income tax cuts coming this year and next year, Mr Speaker. We're boosting superannuation for people on lower incomes. We've got student debt relief, cheaper medicines, and also more bulk billing, because we know that more bulk billing means less pressure on families, Mr Speaker. And if you think about all of the foundations of a decent society in this country, Medicare, superannuation, decent pay, the ability to balance work and family responsibilities, these are the foundations of a decent society, Mr Speaker. And I think it's worth the parliament understanding that the new Shadow Treasurer opposes all of those things. The new Shadow Treasurer opposes all of those things. Of the 3 Shadow Treasurers that I have faced in the last 9 months, Mr Speaker, this one is easily the most extreme and the riskiest of the lot, Mr Speaker. This is a guy who has called for the privatisation of Medicare, Mr Speaker. He has said that superannuation should be dismantled, Mr Speaker, and he's described working from home as apartheid, Mr Speaker.
Resume your seat. The order. Just the member for Cornwall. Order. Members on my right will cease interjecting. I'd like to hear from the Manager of Opposition Business.
Speaker, I know you ruled on correct titles, but the Treasurer just then referred to you as this guy, and I think he should refer to people correctly and use their title.
Yeah, we've had this before, and the manager is correct that that title was used in a disparaging way, and it was the other side that was doing it in another moment. So if we can cease using that way to describe members of parliament from both sides of the chamber, it will greatly assist. So the Treasurer is being directly relevant. He's in order, but just with his titles, because that is clearly important to members. Very important to members that we refer to all members by their titles, including the Speaker. Oh, the member for Goldstein does not need to comment on this. Trust me. The Treasurer has the call.
He can't even get a question, Mr Speaker. Now, the new Leader of the Opposition was expressing some surprise about the Shadow Treasurer's views, Mr Speaker. He might have appointed him, but it seems he hasn't Googled him, Mr Speaker, because all of these views are well known and on the public record. But I think the other interpretation, Mr Speaker, is that the new Leader of the Opposition agrees with the Shadow Treasurer. The Shadow Treasurer has called for the privatisation of Medicare, said super should be dismantled, described working from home as apartheid. 2 days into the job, Mr Speaker, he said the Reserve Bank should push for higher unemployment and higher interest rates by ditching the dual mandate, Mr Speaker.
Order. Okay, members on my right. No, the Minister for Defence Industry. We're just going to handle this in a respectful way. Member for Goldstein is entitled to raise a point of order. The last point of order was dealt with, but the member for Goldstein.
The Treasurer is misleading the House. He's verbalising me completely. And I'm sorry. Listen.
Resume your seat. Look, the member for Goldstein knows you simply can't get up here and say what you'd like. That wasn't a point of order. There are forms of the House, as he well knows. If he thinks he's been misrepresented, he may take that. But if he does that again, that is an absolute abuse of the standing orders. Everyone saw that, and that is not acceptable. That's first day back for everyone, but just everyone, I'm asking everyone to step up their behaviour and just follow the rules of the House. So the member for Goldstein is warned. And we'll just get the Treasurer to conclude his answer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. All of these views from the Shadow Treasurer are on the public record. Some of them are in the book that he wrote, some of them are from Hansard, some of them are from his comments in the last couple of weeks.
Order.
Mr Speaker, my point is this. At a time when Australians are under pressure, the absolute worst thing that we could do is what the Shadow Treasurer proposes, which is dismantle super, privatise Medicare, end work from home, Mr Speaker, all of the things that he has called for, Mr Speaker. Now, what we've got here is a weird combination of the worst minister in the Morrison government and the most extreme Shadow Treasurer we've seen in memory, and they agree on these disastrous, unhinged ideological policies.
Order. The call to the member for Riverina.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. In the building today are several members of the Wagga Wagga Yazidi community who have come to Canberra to share their trauma that they received at the hands of ISIS or Daesh before they fled to Australia. Prime Minister, how can the government assure the inconsistent messaging regarding ISIS sympathisers returning to Australia won't destroy the lives these beautiful, beautiful Yazidi people are rebuilding in our country?
Give a call. Order. Give the call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Riverina for his question. I join with him in welcoming the members of that community. The ISIS ideological position is one that seeks to wreak violence, murder and trauma on the world, but no group more than in their local community, than in the Middle East itself. And for minority groups like the Yazidi community, they have suffered greatly, and they have been welcomed to Australia and indeed have been hard-working in communities such as yours, working in the agricultural sector, but right throughout Australia they have been welcomed. We are a welcoming country, and we stand completely against the evil regime that is ISIS. And that's why, frankly, and I know that the member for Riverina has a proud history of not seeking to promote division or play politics with these issues. That's why no one in this place should be doing that. No one should be suggesting the sort of interjections that I heard across the chamber earlier, because we all stand united as Australians against Islamic State. We all stand.
Order. The member for Bowman is warned.
And that's an example where I'm speaking about what Australia's position is. And what we need, and I've consistently said this, is a search for more unity, of coming together for our common interest, of not trying to play these political games, pretending the Constitution isn't there, pretending that the law isn't there, but engaging directly with people. And that's how people such as that community who fled danger and made Australia their home as refugees can get that reassurance that we as a nation have given communities from all over the world since at least the dismantling of the White Australia policy which now I would hope is a bipartisan position that we have. So I say to the member for Riverina, I know that the Minister for Home Affairs is meeting with the community as well. That would be welcome. He's meeting with them this afternoon. They are welcome, and I thank them for the contribution that they're making as loyal Australians, not giving up their heritage of their own culture, but adopting as well loyalty to our great nation.
Call to the honourable member for Bullwinkle.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Home Affairs. Can the Minister please update the House on the arrest made in Western Australia last week for the alleged terrorism offence?
Call to the Leader of the House and Minister for Home Affairs.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for Bullwinkle for the question, and I know all members, and particularly members from the West, were shaken with the information that came out with the arrests last week. At the end of last week, West Australia Joint Counter-Terrorism Team, which involves the Australian Federal Police, the West Australian Police Force and ASIO, charged a 20-year-old man with acting in preparation or planning for a terrorist act. The man has also been charged with firearms offences. He was arrested by WA Police when they were executing a search warrant as part of an investigation into alleged anti-Semitic, Islamophobic and racially motivated online hate speech. When they got there, they discovered a manifesto-style document outlining plans for nationalist and racist ideological motivated act of violent extremism aimed at attacking mosques in Western Australia, as well as Western Australia Police Headquarters and the State Parliament. For some time now, our security, intelligence and law enforcement agencies have been warning that we are entering a new security environment. There are many different ideologies that can give rise to extremism. Sometimes it's a range, sometimes it's a mix of ideologies. Sometimes the threat of the ideology, we often talk about it coming across the border. Much of this now is coming straight across the internet into Australia. Whenever the temperature is higher, whenever those who promote hate feel emboldened, this increases the likelihood that violence will be planned and attempted. I say to all Australians, if you see something or are concerned about a rise in hateful behaviour from someone, report it to the police or to the National Security Hotline on 1800 123 400. The specific attacks, as well as the Parliament and police, were aimed at mosques. We know the Australian Muslim community has been experiencing increased levels of Islamophobia. It is not fictitious, it is real. This man allegedly wanted to target mosques, a place of prayer and worship for many Australians. Every elected official who claims to care about national security has a responsibility to turn the temperature down. Every act of bigotry flies in the face of who we are as Australians. And every Australian Muslim, because that's who these ones were directed at, every Australian Muslim, just like every other Australian, has a right to be safe and to feel safe.
The call to the honourable member for New England.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Since the commencement of hostilities in the Middle East, what actions has he had to assure Australia of security of fuel supplies, especially diesel, and how much diesel in days do we currently have in store on Australian soil?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for the question. The answer to the question is 34 days in relation to diesel, 32 days in relation to jet fuel and 36 days in relation to petrol. I know he only asked me about diesel, but I think he would be interested in the other figures as well. I am pleased to say, Mr Speaker, that these stocks are the highest they've been for any time in 15 years. Mr Speaker, I'm very pleased to say that. Obviously, the more fuel supply we have on hand, the better. And I'm very glad that we now have 15 days more than in any times than in 15 years. And I do note that when we came to office, the stock was held in Texas and Louisiana, Mr. Speaker. Now, I'm not sure whether you call that the Gulf of America or the Gulf of Mexico, but it's certainly not the Gulf of Australia, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
We believe that our fuel supply should be kept here.
The minister will just pause. He's talking about the stock of the fuel supply, which he was asked about. The member for New England, a point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's on relevance and with respect. I did say on Australian soil. What he's mentioning now is also what is at sea on its way to Australia. They are on ships of convenience and can be directed away at any time.
He was asked about the security of order. He was asked about the security of diesel supply and what stock of supply. So, just making sure, if the minister was asked a question about stock on Australia, that he's being directly relevant to that question he was also asked about.
The member for the point of order, and it's a reasonable point of clarification, Mr. Speaker. Those figures only include fuel in Australia or on ships in our economic zone. Only that is what it's included, not ships that are some way away, whether they be in the Middle East or Singapore or the Gulf of Mexico. That is fuel in our exclusive economic zone. It is true, it is not all on land in Australia, my advice is, but it does include fuel that is on the way in Australia but is in our economic zone. Now, Mr. Speaker, we believe it's appropriate. That's why we introduced minimum holding stocks. This was work that was not conducted by the previous government. The previous government saw 4 out of 6 petroleum refineries closed when they were in charge. 4 out of 6 closed, Mr. Speaker. The 2 that we inherited are still in operation. That is not because, Mr. Speaker, of an accident. It's because of government and industry working together. We believe that this is appropriate because what is required is to have stocks on hand for circumstances that are unpredictable globally and internationally. Now, as I said, Mr. Speaker, the previous arrangement was that these stocks would be held overseas. In fact, I can refer the House to a press release on the 8th of March 2020, headed Visit to the United States of America, which says Minister Taylor will hold bilateral discussions with US Energy Secretary and sign a landmark agreement with the United States that would allow Australia to access crude oil that is held in the US Strategic Petroleum Reserve during an emergency, Mr. Speaker. The giveaway is in the name, in the US Strategic Reserve. We believe in a strategic reserve which is Australian in Australia, Mr. Speaker. That provides a greater level of convenience of access, Mr. Speaker, if the soil is around closer to where you are, not in the United States. Call us old-fashioned, but we believe that's a better approach, to have that fuel either in Australia or on the way to Australia. The member for New England raised a legitimate question. It only includes fuel that is on the way to Australia as well as fuel that is in Australia as we speak. That is a good thing. We think that's a better arrangement than the one we inherited.
Give a call to the member for Paterson.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure and Transport. How's the Albanese Labor government furthering the delivery of high-speed rail, and how does this compare to other approaches for rail projects?
Call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Thank you very much to the member for Paterson for her question, and I was so pleased to stand with her and the member for Newcastle in Newcastle last week to announce that high-speed rail is a step closer. Our government is now entering the development phase for a line between Newcastle and Sydney. Teams will now go metre by metre doing the detailed planning and design work required so that we can make a final investment decision to put shovels in the ground. We will be getting early contractor involvement to make sure we have got this project right, and there are industry briefings happening in April in Newcastle. We'll be designing the tunnels, getting the design of the stations, understanding the signalling system that is needed, and this is the steady, purposeful work, getting that design right so we can make a future investment decision with confidence that we have all the facts on this project. Our country is, of course, growing, and we know existing road and rail between Sydney and Newcastle is at capacity. Significant investment is going to be needed in the M1 and into rail if we do nothing because of the population growth through this fantastic part of the world. High-speed rail can absolutely be part of the solution to that. Stage 1A and 1B will be dedicated high-speed rail connecting Newcastle to central Sydney in an hour, allowing us to deliver more homes, spread jobs across the state and grow the economy of the Hunter. Now, one of my shadow infrastructure ministers, you may not know there's actually two. There's a National Party one and a Liberal Party one, because I assume because they don't actually trust each other. But their latest contribution was that the Commonwealth doesn't own a bulldozer and has no constitutional authority to just rock into states and start building dams or roads or rail projects. Now, this is true, but it is a fascinating point to make when that is exactly what those opposite did with Inland Rail. When we came to government, we discovered that this approach to building inland rail was frankly just to start before they'd worked out where the line would start and end. They said it would connect the ports of Melbourne and Brisbane, but they couldn't tell us how. There was no schedule, no actual plan. And what happened as a result was the costs have blown out to 4 to 5 times what they guesstimated it would cost. We had to commission the independent SHOT review to make sure that this wasn't a multi-million-dollar train to nowhere, and I'm pleased that as a result of the review we've now turned the first sod at the Beveridge Intermodal. We're prioritising building to Parkes so we can then start moving double-stack trains from Melbourne all the way to Perth. This, of course, was part of an infrastructure pipeline we inherited that was full of pet projects with no details beyond a press release. Delivering infrastructure, it takes time, and it takes a government that spends more time on the planning and design than it does on Sky News. That's why our government is entering this detailed planning process for high-speed mail to make it a reality.
Order. Order. The Prime Minister has the floor.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Given there have been not a single question about the economy or cost of living from those opposite, I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.
I will give the call to the member for Berowra for a moment, or the member for well, the member for Berowra did the courtesy of letting me know that he wished to do that. Is the member for Goldstein seeking the same? All right, well, we'll do this in an orderly way. I'll just report this to the House first of all. I present a corrigendum to the Auditor General's Performance Statements Audit Report number 22 of 2025 entitled Performance Statements of Major Australian Government Entities, Outcomes from the 2024-2025 Audit Program across entities. We'll go to the member for Berowra, who is seeking the call on a misrepresentation.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I seek leave to make a personal
explanation. Do you claim to be misrepresented?
Most grievously so.
You may proceed.
In question time, the Prime Minister quoted some words I said in the second reading debate on the Temporary Exclusion Orders Bill in 2019. What the Prime Minister didn't mention was that I was directly explaining how temporary exclusion orders would allow returns to be managed and why they should only be used in our security interests. The government refuses to issue temporary exclusion orders. Under its self-managed return policy, the government refuses to do exactly the thing that I said the government should do when I addressed the House in 2019. To imply my position is supportive of the government's current approach, as the Prime Minister has done, is misleading and disingenuous.
Just before we get to the member for Goldstein, when people are doing a misrepresentation, you simply state where the misrepresentation has occurred, not an explanation around it. So short and sharp is the order of business when it comes to misrepresentation. So I hope the member for Goldstein has picked up that cue, and I give the call to the member for Goldstein who's claiming to be misrepresented.
I do, Speaker. Speaker, during question time today, only a few moments ago, the member for Rankin made a series of misrepresentations of my positions on matters. Firstly, he claimed that I, quote, want to privatise Medicare. That is not the case. I believe in sustainable Medicare. He claimed that I want to, quote, dismantle superannuation. That is not true. I simply want to stop the corruption and make sure that home ownership takes precedence. He claimed that I had referred to work from home as apartheid. This is a very close verbling of what I said. The Allen government in Victoria has created a work-from-home program which they have described as a right, which will not extend to everybody, and so it is they who are engaging in that practice. I am criticising them for engaging in that practice. I will say one thing, which is the Treasurer did get one thing right, which is I am an extremist for small and family businesses and the self-employed.
Order. Order. The member for Isaacs, the Leader of the House with papers.
Speaker, these documents are tabled in accordance with the list circulated to honourable members earlier today. Full details of the documents will be recorded in the votes and proceedings.
I have received advice from the Chief Opposition Whip that he has nominated members to be members of the Selection Committee. I ask the Leader of the House.
Ask leave of the House to move a motion for the appointment of members to the Selection Committee.
Is leave granted? Member for Gippsland.
Leave is granted.
Leave is granted. Give the call to the Minister.
I move that Mr Pike be discharged from the Selection Committee and that Mr Small and Ms Aldred be appointed members of the committee.
I'll put the question. Those opinions say aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it.